everybody. Welcome to Feeding Our Faith, where we're studying our Faith 101. We continue along. We were talking about the family of Abraham. What a big family. And I believe we were leaving off on Isaac, and I think we're going to come back to him to the beginning of this talk and move on from there. So I'm going to pass it on to you, Pastor Diane.
Sounds like you got it right. So, of course, we know that, Abraham had two sons at this very beginning, but clearly Sarah had already passed when we started talking. But Abraham was like, I don't know, they were both over 100 or close to it when Isaac was born. So God's, told him to sacrifice Isaac. And when he did, we talked about how he would have suffered going up the mountain to sacrifice him. But, God had a way of making it work out for him. And God has a way of doing that for a lot of us. But son Isaac, basically one of the fathers, at least ancestors, we technically call his son the father, but of the 12 tribes, and it's important. But remember, Isaac was 40 years old when he got married, right? And I wanted to draw you first to Genesis 12, 10 through 20.
I can start.
Who's going to look that up? And then somebody look up Genesis 36, 1 through 33.
Okay. I've got 10 through however far it needs to go.
Okay. You got 12 through 20.
I've got Genesis 36.
26. Oh, 26. I'm sorry.
sorry.
Yeah. I might have said that. I do that wrong all the time, Thomas. Tell me the wrong thing.
Okay. I got Genesis 26. How about that one?
There you go. So we'll let Tony go first when he's reading his verse. And this was Abraham as he was going into Egypt.
Okay. Now there was a famine in the land. So Abram went down to Egypt to live there. For the famine was severe in the land. When he was getting near to Egypt, he said to Sarah, his wife, I know that you are a beautiful woman. Therefore, when the Egyptians see you, they will say, this is his wife. They will then kill me, but they will let you live. Say that you are my sister, so that I may be treated well for your sake, and then my life will be spared because of you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Roxy, now let's move to 26 and know that we're here talking about Isaac, not Abraham. This is Isaac.
Okay, what verses do you want read?
Well, let's start and we'll read it far enough till we know where we can say, aha.
Okay.
You'll know.
There was another famine in the land besides the earlier one during the time of Abraham. Isaac went to Abimelech, king of the Philistines, at Gerar. The Lord had appeared to Isaac and had said, do not go to Egypt. Stay in this land where I tell you to stay. Live here, and I will be with you and bless you. I am going to give all of this territory to you and to your descendants. I will keep the promise I made to your father Abraham. I will give you as many descendants as there are stars in the sky, and I will give them all this territory. All the nations will ask me to bless them as I have blessed your descendants. I will bless you because Abraham obeyed me and kept all our laws and commands. So Isaac lived in Gerar. When the men there asked about his wife, he said that she was his sister. He would not admit that she was his wife because he was afraid that the men would kill him to get Rebecca, who was very beautiful.
Close enough. So like a father, like a son?
Yeah.
So just out of curiosity, I thought to myself, is Abimelech that thick-headed that he would fall for that twice? But As I looked it up, Abimelech means father and leader or king. So they think there's might have been two of them, father and son, because it's a pretty common name like Pharaoh. But I think it's kind of curious that you will see in some of these cases, like you see Abraham's wife, Sarah, was barren, didn't have any children, right? Abraham traveled to Egypt and he said, this isn't my wife, this is my sister. So later on, Isaac married a woman who was barren. And he stayed in Egypt and also told the people and the king there ultimately that his wife was his sister. So some of this stuff is curious to me. Did Abraham say, well, I got away with it with your mom? But it wasn't the case, because clearly both times the king found out. And in Isaac's case, he said, what is this you have done to us? One of your men might well have slept with your wife, and you would have brought guilt upon us. So he gave orders to all the people, anyone who molests this man or his wife shall surely be put to death. So they both used the same trick to save their lives. One of the things, and I'm not a Bible literalist, I've never been, because I think sometimes people write, I've written many sermons that you think you're writing what God wants you to write, but I do believe, this may have happened. I don't know. I wasn't there. But the whole thing is curious. And I just wanted to point it out to you that if you run across this, first of all, you have to say, that's a little curious. And then you also have to say, sometimes you just have to just take the wisdom of things and forget the little, that the I's and T's may not be crossed and dotted in your own understanding. You can't let these things throw you, is what I'm saying, right? Okay, so there we have what that commonality between the two of them. And we talked last week, remember how when Abraham didn't want Isaac to have a wife out of the territory in which he was, so he sent his slave to basically find Isaac a wife, right? So now we're going to 27. And that's where we talked about the chief servant in his household, put one in charge, and he said, put your hand under my thigh. Remember, Abraham asked him to swear an oath that he would do what he said. This is all pretty neat, the way this whole thing runs out. I asked Melanie, and I understand that Tony has, because basically then was born Jacob and Esau, right? So I'll read just this a little bit. This comes from 25, and you notice how some of this stuff flips around in my points. This is the account of Abraham's son Isaac. Abraham became a father of Isaac, and Isaac was 40 years old when he married Rebekah, the daughter of Bethuel, an Aramean from Paddan Aram, and the sister of Laban, the Aramean. Of course, Laban, well, you'll find out about him later. Isaac prayed to the Lord on behalf of his wife because she was barren, as was Sarah. Remember, the Lord answered his prayer, and his wife Rebekah became pregnant. The babies jostled each other within her. She had twins. Why is this happening? And they inquired of the Lord, and the Lord said this, and this is coming from 25:23. 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you will be separated. And 2 peoples from within you will be separated. One people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger. So when it came time to be born, first to come out was Esau. And the Bible describes him as red, and his whole body was like a hairy garment. So he was born kind of hairy and red. And after that, basically, Jacob came out, right? So basically, if you're taking it then according to the way they looked at it back then, Esau was the firstborn and Jacob came after him, right?
Right.
So in these days, they had things like birthrights. And the birthright means, and I'm going to look it up here for a moment because I know I have it someplace. It means basically that you are entitled to the inheritance. Curious to me, but nonetheless. So it's kind of interesting what happened to these two guys, and I wanted to take it through scripture, right? So we're going to go to 25, 24 to 34. Ralph, are you getting so you want to read?
I can try.
Okay. Genesis 25, 24 through 34.
And sure enough, she had twins. The first was born so covered with reddish hair that one would think he was wearing a fur coat. So they called him Esau. Then the other twin was born with his hand on Esau's heel. So they called him Jacob, meaning grabber. Isaac was 60 years old when the twins were born. As the boys grew, Esau became a skillful hunter, while Jacob was a quiet sort who liked to stay at home. Isaac's favorite was Esau because of the venison he brought home, and Rebekah's favorite was Jacob.
Okay, so did you catch that? Abraham liked one, Jacob's favorite was the other. Okay, Ralph.
More?
Yep. Start with 29.
One day, Jacob was cooking stew when Esau arrived home exhausted from the hunt. Esau says, "Boy, am I starved. Give me a bite of that red stuff there." From this came his nickname, Edom, which means red stuff. Jacob says, "All right, trade me your birthright for it." Esau, when a man is dying of starvation, what good is his birthright? Jacob, well then, vow to God that it is mine. And Esau vowed thereby selling all his eldest son's rights to his younger brother. Then Jacob gave Esau bread, peas, and stew. So he ate and drank and went on about his business, indifferent to the loss of the rights he had thrown away.
Yeah, now there was a short thinking man.
It was a very expensive bowl of soup.
Yeah, I have a strange my translation. The last stanza of my translation was, "Thus Esau despised his birthright."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he wasn't happy about it at all. Okay, so they're the two brothers, and he had his birthright. And then if that wasn't enough, he went even a little further. Let's go to 27. Start with 1.
Okay, I can start.
Okay.
When Isaac was old and his eyes were so weak that he could not see, he called Esau his oldest son and said to him, "My son." And he answered him, "Here I am." He said, "I am old and I do not know the day of my death. Therefore, please take your weapons, your quiver and your bow, and go out to the field and hunt game for me, and prepare for me savory food such as I love, and bring it to me that I may eat, so that my soul may bless you before I die."
Now, the blessing was a big deal too. It was separate from the birthright.
Should I continue?
Yeah, just to let you know that the blessing is sort of like a powerful prayer that guarantees you success and prosperity. That's what the blessing is. Okay, go ahead.
Rebekah was listening when Isaac spoke to Esau, his son.
Now
when
that's their
Esau-
mother.
Yeah. So
Rebekah's their
when Esau
mother.
went to the field to hunt for wild game and bring it back, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, I heard your father speak to your brother Esau, saying, bring me wild game or prepare me savory food, and that I may eat and bless you in the presence of the Lord before my death. Now therefore, my son, listen to me as I command to you. Go now to the flock and get me 2 choice young goats, so that I may prepare them as savory food for your father, such as he loves. Then you will take it to your father, so that he may eat, and so that he may bless you before his death. But
Okay.
Jacob said to his mother Rebekah, look, my brother Esau is a hairy man, and I am a man of smooth skin. Perhaps my father will feel me, and I will seem to him as a deceiver, and I will bring a curse upon myself and not a blessing. And his mother said to him, let the curse be upon me, my son. Only listen to me and go and get them for me. He went and got them and brought them to his mother. Then his mother prepared savory food such as his father loved. Then Rebekah took the best clothes belonging to her oldest son Esau, which were with her in the house, and put them on Jacob, her younger son. Then she put the skins of the younger goats on his hands and the smooth part of his neck. I'm sorry, and on the smooth part of his neck. Okay. And she put the savory food and bread for which she had prepared into the hands of her son Jacob. He came to his father and said, my father. And he said, here I am. Who are you, my son? And Jacob said to his father, I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done just as you asked. Please arise, sit and eat of my wild game, so that your soul may bless me. Isaac said to his son, how is it that you have found it so quickly, my son? And he said, because the Lord your God brought it to me. Isaac said to Jacob, please come near so that I may feel you, my son, whether you are really my son Esau or not. Jacob went near his father Isaac, and when he felt him, said, the voice is of Jacob, but the hands are of Esau. He did not realize him because his hands were hairy, just like his brother Esau's, so he blessed him. He asked, are you really my son Esau? And he said, I am. He said, bring it near to me, and I will eat of my son's wild game, so that my soul may bless you.
There you go. That's enough, Tony.
Okay.
So there's a pretty sneaky way to get both the birthright and the blessing, which
And
in
the mother
essence,
was very deceitful.
yeah, which in essence made Jacob the head of the family after Abraham died. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
So obviously when Esau came home, he was not happy. And he reached down and he heard his father's words, and he burst out in a loud, bitter cry, said, bless me too, father. And Abraham said, sorry, only have one blessing. So now I'm going to verse 41 on the same chapter. Roxy, do you want to read just a little bit?
Okay.
You don't need to go much further than about, that whole verse.
The whole,
Yeah, you're going 28, 41.
oh, twice. Okay. Now you said chapter 41. I mean,
No,
is that
no. Chapter 28, verse 41.
okay? That's chapter 28. 40. Okay, back chapter 28, verse 41. Okay,
Yep.
where
I don't have that.
my chapter 28 doesn't have that many
You mean
verses.
chapter 27?
Oh, I'm sorry, 27. I'm sorry, my 28's down there. I missed it. Thanks for calling that out to me. 27:41, Roxy. My fault.
Okay. Esau hated Jacob because his father had given Jacob the blessing. He thought, the time to mourn my father's death is near. Then I will kill Jacob.
There you go.
But when Rebekah heard about Esau's plan, she sent for Jacob and said, listen, your brother Esau is planning to get even with you and kill you. Now, son, do what I say. Go at once to my brother Laban in Haran and stay with them for a while until your brother's anger cools down and he forgets what you have done to him. Then I will send someone to bring you back. Why should I lose both of my sons on the same day?
There you go. So
it's being very, very deceitful. I mean,
yes, you send him off to go off to your uncle and stay here till your brother cools down. Right?
Right.
So Jacob continues and he ends up in Padan Aram or Padan Aram, however you say it. And then I'm going on to 29. And I'll just tell you the story. And if you think you need to get it a little longer, find out. Jacob basically went to Laban and he saw the daughter Rachel, who was very beautiful, and he wanted to marry her. So he went to Laban, and said, I like to marry your daughter. I like to marry your daughter. So Laban said, okay, if you work for me for 7 years, you will have her. So that's exactly what Jacob did. But what happened is on the wedding night, and all it's confusing a little to me, I assume they drank quite a bit. Laban switched daughters on him. And instead of marrying Rachel, he gave Leah to Jacob. And the story is basically he didn't catch on to it at all until after he had slept with Leah. So then he wakes up and he says, what happened here? What do you think, Tony?
Oh my goodness, it's almost a sitcom by itself.
Yeah, comedy of errors.
You can make it a soap opera, right?
Yeah, soap opera. There it is. I'm looking at the family tree here while we're talking, and that's just cousins basically that he's marrying. And
let me tell you, it gets a little crazier, and you'll see it when as we go by. So then, a lot of people think that Jacob worked 7 years and he got Leah, and then he worked 7 more years and he got Rachel. Rachel was the one he loved. But that basically isn't the way it's written. So I'll just kind of see. After Jacob had stayed with him for a whole month, Laban said, just because you're a relative of mine, you should work for me for nothing. And that's how he ended up doing all of that. So then basically what he did was he worked 7 years and he got Leah. And then Jacob went to him and said, Laban, you tricked me. And Laban said, well, okay, you got to work for me 7 more years. But it wasn't that he waited 7 years to get to Rachel, because if you read it in the scripture, it says that just let her bride week go by. So what he's saying is, you married the one daughter and a week later, you can okay to marry the other one, but you're still going to have to work for me. What do you think of that?
Double crosser.
The whole thing is, seriously?
I mean, did they keep their faces covered when they had the marriage ceremony?
Well, Oxy, I'm fairly old, but I don't think I'm that old. That's a good question. So here we have Jacob married to 2 women, and guess what? Rachel, the one he liked the most and loved the most, his heart was barren. But scripture tells us that the Lord felt bad for Leah, So he opened her womb, and she was the first to have a child, and she named him Reuben, right? But she says, the Lord has surely seen my misery. Then she conceived again, and she had another son, and she named him Simeon. And then she conceived, and she said, now at last my husband will love me. No. And she named him Levi. Then she conceived again and gave birth to a son, and this time he was Judah. So she had four kids before Rachel had anybody, right? So let's go to 30. And who wants to read that from the beginning of the chapter? And we almost have to read that a little bit to 24. That's take us a little bit. I can read if you want. Okay, I will. When Rachel saw that she was not bearing Jacob any children, she became jealous of her sister. So she said to Jacob, give me children or I'll die. Jacob became angry with her and said, am I in the place of God who has kept you from having children? And then she said, here is Bilhah, my maidservant. Sleep with her so that she can bear children for me, and that through her I too can build up a family. Now you got Jacob mixed up with 3 women. So she gave him her servant Bilhah as a wife, and Jacob slept with her, and she became pregnant and bore a son. And Rachel said, God has vindicated me. He has listened to my plea and gave me a son, and they named him Dan. Rachel's servant Bilhah conceived again and bore Jacob a second son. And Rachel said, I have had a great struggle with my sister, and I have won. So she named him Naphtali. Then Leah saw that she had stopped having children, and she took her maidservant Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as a wife. 4 women.
It's amazing he managed to live that long. I mean, he was a busy man.
So Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a second son, and Leah said, how happy I am. They'll call me happy. So she named him Asher. During the wheat harvest, Reuben went out to the fields and found some mandrake plants, which he brought to his mother Leah. Rachel said to Leah, please give me some of your son's mandrakes. And she said to her, wasn't it enough that you took away my husband? Will you also take my son's mandrakes? And Rachel said, very well, he can sleep with you tonight, meaning Jacob, in return for your son's mandrakes. Now, I have no idea what a mandrake is. Melanie was here. We would Google
See
it.
if I could find out here.
Okay.
Mandrake.
Yep, mandrake.
Okay.
Must have been something pretty good.
A mandrake is the root of a plant, historically derived either from plants of the genus Mandragora, found in the Mediterranean region, or from other species such as Bryonia alba, the English mandrake, which have similar properties.
But it doesn't, it's just a root, but it doesn't tell you what.
Well, here it is. What is mandrakes in the Bible? A mandrake is a plant with a thick root that looks a little like a parsnip or a fat carrot. Mandrakes are famous in literature and folklore. They appear in the Bible, and one story claims that they scream when pulled from the ground, killing the person who harvests them.
That probably comes from something in Harry Potter that I remember seeing. So, but then anyway, she said, I want some of these mandrakes, and if you give them to me, I'll let Jacob sleep with you tonight. So Jacob came in from the fields, and Leah went out and said, you must sleep with me. I have hired you with my son's mandrakes. So she slept with him, and God listened to Leah, and she became pregnant and bore Jacob a 5th son. Then Leah said, God has rewarded me for giving my maidservant to the husband. So she called him Issachar. Leah conceived again and bore Jacob a 6th son. Then Leah said, God has presented me with a precious gift. This time my husband will treat me with honor because I have borne him 6 sons. So she named him Jebulun. Sometime later, she gave birth to a daughter named Dinah. He had one daughter. Then God remembered Rachel. He listened to her, opened her womb, and she became pregnant and gave birth to a son and said, God has taken away my disgrace. She named him Joseph and said, may the Lord add to me another son. So finally, after all these children are born, Rachel becomes pregnant by her husband. And see what she named him? Joseph, the number one dude. And obviously, Isaac loved Jacob because he was born from the woman that he truly loved. So you see how Jacob became the favorite. Or I mean, not Jacob, Joseph. Remember how Joseph had all these brothers and then they had all this kind of trouble with them. Pretty interesting, I think. So I basically now I want to, Rachel and Isaac died. So I'm going to just go to Genesis 38. And we'll read that just a little bit.
Which verses?
You know, I don't have it, but it's okay to start. Let me see. No, I'm not entirely sure. Hang on, let me Google it a little word.
Okay.
And this would be the time, Tony, when you could go ahead and get the
Okay.
the chart ready.
So here's the chart.
Okay, so there you go.
You can see how it
Jacob and Esau
Abraham.
splits. Yeah.
Isaac, Jacob, and then Laban's daughters, Leah and Rachel, numbered of the 12 tribes of Israel by numbered by order, I suppose.
I
was following through as we were reading through the scripture.
Okay, well, there you go.
Reuben, Simon, Levi.
But we're a little wrong when we say those 12 boys end up being the 12 tribes of Israel. And that's because Levi, if you'll remember, the Levites were made to be the priests, right? And Joseph ultimately goes to Egypt when his brothers sell him. He doesn't go, he's taken there. So he stays in Egypt. So that leaves 2 brothers out. So what they did was they took 2 of, I always get mixed up when I'm doing these, 2 of Joseph's, nope. Come on, who was the guy that was taken? Joseph. 2 of Joseph's sons and made them the tribes. So you have 10 of Jacob's sons, 2 of Joseph's sons. But then look at all of the Esau's tribes, right? Not exactly known as the cream of the Israelite crop, right? So you basically can see what happened. Jacob took the lead and Esau stayed home and had children. There comes a time though in 37. Whoops, nope, got that wrong. 36 is where you can close that one up now. Thank you. Now I'll get my cheat notes up here because I can't remember all of these. It's kind of curious that one daughter out of all of those, either that or they didn't bother mentioning the rest of them. Yeah, I have it 36, 38, but it's 36 where Esau's descendants were.
Okay.
But then ultimately now, then you have Jacob starting, well, he kind of rafted over Laban. And Laban tried to stick it to him and he came right back at Laban. Let me try to find this. Basically, Jacob said to him, well, let's split I worked for you long enough. Let's split the herds, right? So Jacob had this kind of a tricky thing that he did. I'm going to 30, and we're gonna, let's start with 27 a little bit. 30, 27. Ralph, do you want to start a little?
At 27?
Yep, no, chapter 30, verse 27.
Chapter 30.
Mm-hmm. And this is when Jacob worked for Laban for quite a while and they started getting quite a few herds.
I'm working at it.
That's all right. Let me just fill in the beginning till you have 27. So after Rachel gave birth to Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, send me away so I can go back to my own homeland. Give me my wives and my children for whom I served you, and I'll be on my way. You know how much work I've done for you. So here's what Laban said to him.
What verse are you on?
27.
Yeah, 27, chapter 30, verse 27.
But Laban said to him, if you will allow me to say so, I have learned by divination that the Lord has blessed me because of you. Name your wages, and I will give it. Jacob said to him, you yourself know how I served you and how your cattle have fared with me. For you had little before I came, and it has increased abundantly. And the Lord had blessed you wherever I turned. But now, when shall I provide for my own household also? He said, what shall I give you? Jacob said, you shall not give me anything. If you will do this for me, I will again feed your flock and keep it. Let me pass through all your flock today, removing from it any speckled and spotted sheep, and every black lamb, and the spotted and speckled among the goats, and such shall be my wages. More?
Yep. Well, go down to 34, Ralph. Go down to 34.
Okay. Laban said, good. Let it be as you have said. But that day Laban removed the he-goats that were striped and spotted, and all the she-goats that were speckled and spotted. Every one had white on it, and every lamb that was black, and put them in charge of his sons. And he said, at a distance of 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob fed the rest of the Laban flock.
Mm-hmm.
More?
Yeah, well, let me just fill it in. So what happened here was Jacob knew a lot about dominant and recessive genes. So when the herds procreated, he knew who to mate with who so that he would get more flock than Laban. Jacob, however, took a fresh cut branch from poplar, almond, and plains trees and made white stripes on them by peeling the bark and exposing the inner white wood in the branches. Then he placed the peeled branches in all the watering troughs so that they would be directly in front of the flocks when they came to drink. So he was putting barriers in their way. When the flocks were in heat and came to drink, they made it in front of the branches, and they bore young that were streaked or spotted. And Jacob set the young apart of the flock by themselves, but he made the rest face the streaked and dark colored animals that belonged to Laban. So he all did this fancy thing, and he got a lot more sheep and herds than Laban. I think it's sort of comeuppance for having to work for him for 14 years, don't you think?
Yep.
But Roxy's always right. You know, we think about the Bible history as being something that's pure as snow. Not so much.
And why did the men have so many wives?
Well, I would say if you were raising 5,000 sheep, you would need a lot of people to take care of them. And a big family, especially sons, was a sign of prosperity, a sign of your virility. So it's all good. But in these cases, the wives did it out of jealousy. Right?
Okay.
So anyway, Laban catches on to the fact that Jacob has left, and he wants to chase after him. And he did. But when he chased after him and he saw him, he didn't say, have a fight with him or kill him. He just says, so early the next morning, Laban kissed his grandchildren and his granddaughters, and he blessed them, and he left and returned home. Right? So now we come to the drama of it, because Jacob is going home, and guess who's there waiting for him?
Leah.
Esau,
Okay.
his brother that he raked over with the blessing and the birthright. So now we're going to go to 32. We're going to read how he prepared, and then 33 when we show a little about how he did it. So Tony, do you want to read? Well, let me read 32 because it's less dramatic.
Okay.
Jacob also went on his way, and the angels of the God met him. And Jacob saw them, and he said, this is the camp of God. So he named it Mahanaim. Jacob sent messengers ahead of him to his brother Esau in the land of Seir, the country of Edom. He instructed them, this is what you are to say to my master Esau. And he called him his master out of, respect. Your servant Jacob says, I have been staying with Laban and have remained there till now. I have cattle and donkeys and sheep and goats and menservant and maidservants. Now I am sending this message to my Lord, that I may find favor in your eyes. When the messengers returned to Jacob, they said, we went to your brother Esau, and he is now coming to meet you, with 400 men are with him. In fear and distress, Jacob divided the people who were with him into two groups, the flocks, the herds, and the camels as well. He thought, if Esau comes and attacks one group, the group that's left may escape. Then Jacob prayed, O God, my father of Abraham, God of my father Isaac, O Lord, who said to me, go back to your country, because he's saying, hey, God, you sending me back, right? I will make you prosper. I am unworthy of all the kindness and faithfulness you have shown your servant. I had only my staff when I crossed into Jordan, but now I've come with two groups. Save me, I pray, right? So that's what he did. He separated them out. He spent the night, right? And he selected a gift for his brother Esau, 200 female goats, 20 male goats, 200 ewes, 20 rams, 30 females, and with their young, 40 cows, 10 bulls, female donkeys. There were 20, but 10 male donkeys. So obviously he's sending more of the breeding stock than he is the breeders. And he put them in the care of his servants, each herd by itself. And he said, go ahead of me and keep some space between us. He instructed the one in lead, when my brother Esau meets you and asks, to whom do you belong and where are you going? And who owns all these animals in front of you? Then you are to say, they belong to your servant Jacob. They are a gift sent to my lord Esau, and he is coming behind us. So there you go. He instructed the second and the third of all others to follow, and you are to say the same thing if Esau meets you. So they had a plan. That night, Jacob wrestled with God. It doesn't really say much about Jacob wrestling with God, other than that's what happened. He wrestled with him all night long, and that God touched his hip. I believe it was his hip socket. And after that, Jacob limped. So Jacob called the place Peniel, because I saw the face of God, and yet my life was spared. So we're moving to 33, where Esau meets up with Jacob. What do you think is going to happen?
He's going to welcome him with open arms, as though he hadn't deceived him.
That's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened. So let's go to 9 and see what Esau says to him. When, by the way, Jacob says, these things are yours. You know, I've lived good, and here are my family, and here's what I say, I'm going to give this to you. But Esau says, and we're going to 33:9.
But Esau said, I have enough, my brother. Keep what you have. Jacob said, no, please. If I have gained your favor, accept my gift. To see your face is for me like seeing the face of God, now that you have been so friendly to me. Please accept this gift which I have brought for you. God has been kind to me and given me everything I need. Jacob kept on urging him until he accepted. Esau said, let's get ready and leave. I will go ahead of you. Jacob answered, you know that the children are weak, and I must think of the sheep and livestock with their young. If they are driven hard for even one day, the whole herd will die. Please go on ahead of me, and I will follow slowly, going as fast as I can with the livestock and the children until I catch up with you in Edom. Esau said, then let me leave some of my men with you. But Jacob answered, there is no need for that, for I only want to gain your favor. So that day Esau started on his way back to Edom. But Jacob went to Succoth, where he built a house for himself and shelters for his livestock. That is why the place was named Succoth. On his return,
go ahead, Rox.
On his return from Mesopotamia, Jacob arrived safely at the city of Shem in the land of Canaan, and set up his camp in a field near the city. He bought that part of the field from the descendants of Hamor, father of Shechem, for 100 pieces of silver. He put up an altar there and named it for El, the God of Israel.
Mm-hmm. There you go. So that's a pretty good saga. What happened to those two brothers? It came, like we said, we're talking all kind of crazy things happened between Jacob and Esau. Just descendants of Isaac, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, right? And Esau. But remember, there was a daughter born, and that was Leah's daughter, and her name was Dinah, right?
Right.
So we're going to look at the 34. And we're rounding out just about what happened. Ralph, do you want to read 34 a little?
Yeah, how much?
It's a pretty long story. We're going to read the whole chapter. But so you read till you're done reading, and then I'll pick it up.
Okay. Now Dinah, the daughter of Leah, whom she had borne to Jacob, went out to visit the women of the land. And when Shechem, the son of Hamor, the Hivite, the prince of the land, saw her, he seized her and lay with her and humbled her.
He raped her.
My Bible says he raped her.
Yep.
Yeah, well, this suggests it, but it doesn't use that word.
Mm-hmm.
And his soul was drawn to Dinah, the daughter of Jacob. He loved the maiden and spoke tenderly to her. So Shechem spoke to his father Hamor, saying, "Get me this maiden for my wife." Now Jacob heard that he had defiled his daughter Dinah, but his sons were with his cattle and the field. So Jacob held his peace until they came. And Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out to Jacob to speak with him. The sons of Jacob came in from the field when they heard of it. And the men were indignant and very angry because he had wrought folly in Israel by lying with Jacob's daughter, for such a thing ought not to be done. But Hamor spoke with them, saying, "The soul of my son Shechem longs for your daughter. I pray you, give her to him in marriage. Make marriages with us, give your daughters to us, and take our daughters for yourselves. You shall dwell with us, and the land shall be open to you. Dwell and trade in it, and get property in it." Shechem also said to her father and to her brothers, "Let me find favor in your eyes, and whatever you say to me, I will give. Ask of me ever so much as marriage, present, and gift, and I will give according as you say to me. Only give me the maiden to be my wife."
Okay. So let me take over from there a little bit, Ralph. So he raped her, but he decided he loved her and he wanted to marry her. But obviously Jacob was not happy. So because their sister Dinah had been defiled, Jacob's sons replied deceitfully as they spoke to Shechem and his father Hamor. They said to him, "We can't do such a thing. We can't give our sister to a man who is not circumcised. That would be a disgrace to us. We will give our consent to you on one condition only, that you become like us, circumcised in all of your males. Then we will give you our daughters, and we will take your daughters for ourselves. We'll settle among you and one people with you. But if you will not agree to be circumcised, we'll take our sister and go." Their proposal seemed good to Hamor and his son Shechem. The young man, who was the most honored of all of his father's household, lost no time in doing what they said because he delighted with Jacob's daughter. So Hamor and his son Shechem went to the gate of their city to speak to their fellow townsmen. "These men are friendly toward us," they said. "Let them live in our land and trade in it. The land has plenty of room for them. We can marry their daughters and they can marry ours. But the men will consent to live with us as one people only on the condition that our males be circumcised as they themselves are. Won't their livestock, their property, and all their other animals become ours?" they asked. "So let us give our consent to them and they will settle among us." All the men agreed, who went out of the city gate with Hamor and Shechem, and every male in the city was circumcised. 3 days later, while all of them were still in pain, 2 of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, took their swords and attacked the unsuspecting city, killing every male. They put Hamor and his son Shechem to the sword and took Dinah from Shechem's house and left. The sons of Jacob came upon the dead bodies and looted the city where their sister had been defiled. They seized the flocks and the herds and the donkeys and everything else that was theirs in the city. They carried off all their wealth and all their women and children, taking as plunder everything in the household. So Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, "You have brought trouble on me by making me a stench of the Canaanites and the Perizzites, I'm not quite sure. The people living in this land, we are only few in number, and if they join forces against me and attack me, I and my household will be destroyed." But they replied, "Should we have treated our sister like a prostitute?" Whew. I think if we were writing this in a book, it would have taken much more than 30 some chapters. But right behind this, Rachel and Isaac both died. And then there's the scripture that gives us all of the sons of Esau in 36. And it also talks about the rulers. So I think we've pretty much hit all of that. So you have a pretty good understanding of what happened. And seriously, right?
That was
Right.
pretty intense for that generation.
Yeah. And I mean, they really got them, right? They were in pain from being circumcised. So they went up, figured they're in pain. They won't know or how to react to us. So we'll use that and we'll kill them. Crazy. But next we're going to go into 37, and that starts talking about Jacob. Or I don't know why I keep mixing Joseph, right? So you have Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph. That's how it goes. AIJJ, I got to try to remember that. And what happens to him is pretty interesting as well. Now, there's probably not all that much, I don't know, you guys are pretty aware of what happened to Joseph and what his dream was that led him to some of this stuff? Or do you just want to go that way as well?
Go that way as well.
Okay, so I'll dig into that pretty deeply because we got then Joseph and what happened to him. And it's important ultimately because, and I say this, although we'll go back and circle it, there was a famine. And there was Joseph living in Egypt, is top of the head of the government. And there was a famine and his brothers came to him. So of course, all of this hocus pocus. But basically, Joseph said, go and get my dad and get all of the family and bring them to Egypt. That is how the Israelites became slaves in Egypt. Right? So right following what happens to Joseph, we're going to move into Exodus and Moses. And we'll talk about this. How detailed you want to get on Moses too, I don't know how much you guys remember about his life. But we're going to come to the point where we have Moses in the wilderness and then Joshua takes them into the promised land. And then I thought we might take a bit of a break because we're going to have Israel under the judges, and then they have Saul, and then you have David and Solomon. So once we get to the end of this Old Testament, which I'm sure is going to happen by the end of November, I can't imagine that it wouldn't. I think we'll give ourselves a little Christmas celebration because God knows life gets busy during Christmas. And we'll take that and we will center back to the history of the New Testament. But I'm wondering, from all of we've read, and clearly we have others, has there been any other questions pop up in your mind? Because I think what we know about Jesus' ministry will carry us fairly quickly through most of Jesus' story. And you then have the letters, the Pauline letters, but we have talked about the sin and the fall, justification and adoption and atonement, some of those things that get us into the actual theology of the whole thing. Curious. I'm just going to look for you guys to tell me if the pace is too fast, too slow, if it's what you want to study or not. We've gone through it pretty detailed, but I think you all, geez, after what did we do this now? More than a month. You have a pretty good idea of the history of how all of the nation of Israel ran, right?
Yeah.
And that was the purpose of the whole thing. And we'll talk a little bit about all kinds of things, like when Jesus said he came to fulfill the law and the prophets. Because see, that one of the things is you're talking about how arrogant all of these people were and they did things themselves. But they didn't break the law. You know why? They didn't have the law yet.
There weren't any laws.
That's right. They didn't get the law till Moses. So people did whatever
Hmm.
they wanted to do.
To do.
Yeah, I mean I think that's obvious because there was a lot of deceit going on there. There was a lot of
Murderers.
there was a lot of murdering going on there. I mean, it was pretty
You
intense.
go so far as to put the goat's skin on your and pass one son off to the other, so because you like that son more than the others. Seriously.
Mhm.
But it had courts through that whole thing, I think. But anyway, it was really cool how Esau said, I have enough. He forgave him. Pretty neat. All right.
Yeah,
So
did he expect him did Esau want Jacob to come with him back to their homeland, or because it sounds like Jacob kind of said I'm coming there and then he decided to go somewhere else.
well,
I think Jacob deliberately deceived him.
Yeah.
well, the thing of it is, look how many animals. And if Esau's saying, I have the same animal, it's not like they were in the middle of Kansas where there was grass everywhere and the watering holes were a dime a dozen.
Yeah, that makes
Right?
sense.
That's why originally Lot and Abraham split, because the land couldn't withstand the large crops in one place.
Hmm.
And then there is the fact that, biblically, Jacob was honored over Esau. Because God even said that to him. God even says, you're going to be the one. So pretty cool. Anyway, I've learned a lot, in not so much in that I've learned new stories, but I've learned, I think, the continuum of what happened and made that a little more solid in my brain. So you can see why when God had this whole series of people that were born out of men that were cursed or less than honest, why this all came about. It wasn't that God was bloodthirsty. He was doing the greater good, which I've talked about in church, saying, you're never going to be, basically, and it did happen at one point in time during the exile. The Jews married idol worshippers' wives or women. And when they came back and they couldn't build the temple fast enough, the men surmised that it would be because they married women of whose ancestors and who practiced idol worship. So they all decided, even though they had kids and all families, they all decided it would be best if they just divorced their wives.
Seems rash.
And made all the children illegitimate and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, my goodness.
Yeah, crazy. Okay, that'll do us, Tony. If you want to
Sure thing.
lead us out.
Yep. Thanks everybody for tuning in for our Faith 101. We're going to continue it as we move on. Pastor Diane kind of laid out the framework for us to probably take it into the holiday season. And so I want to extend this invitation to come to our Sunday services. We have them every Sunday at 10:30, and you can attend them virtually or in person, and everyone's welcome. So come as you may. And I hope everyone has a great rest of the day. And thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.